Hello, and welcome to another episode of Now Who Would Have Thought? The fact that Napoleon took a lot of baths is well known to his biographers and to the students of his era. He had both a nervous condition and an arthritic tendency which encouraged the habit. Once upon a Napoleonic time, he was taking a bath in the Tuileries, France. And something that happened to the roly-poly little emperor in that soapy-scented tub changed the map of the world forever. Napoleon Bonaparte was immersed in suds. His brothers, Joseph and Lucian, were standing beside the tub, which was on a raised marble island in the room, about 3 small steps up from the floor. It was not at all unusual for Napoleon to conduct urgent business in his bathroom. He spent so much time soaking and splashing around in there that it was almost imperative. So his brothers were present by invitation. You see, Napoleon wanted their advice. Well, he didn't really want their advice. He wanted them to agree with him. Thousands of miles away, Thomas Jefferson was anxiously awaiting the emperor's decision. And here in his bubbly bath, Napoleon was asking the concurrence of his advisors. He had made up his mind to a deal. His brother Joseph recalls that Napoleon said, "I have made up my mind. I am going to sell." Joseph exclaimed, "Nonsense, you can't do that. It's been just a few weeks since Spain ceded it back to us." Lucian, the other brother, was silent. He knew when Napoleon was inflexibly stubborn, and this was one of those times. Joseph became more and more disturbed. However, Lucian did timidly volunteer the suggestion that the chambers may not give consent. "Gentlemen," he said with finality, "I don't give a fig for your opinions. If England declares war on us, we'll never be able to defend those isolated swamps and forests. The sale will go through with or without your consent, or the consent of anyone else. Is that clear?" Joseph, of course, got angry. Joseph stalked up to the steaming tub, bent over his brother, and said, "Now you listen to me. I'll oppose you in the Senate. I'll defeat your fantastic scheme, however long it takes." Now that was pretty strong talk. The soothing effects of the warm tub were now lost. Napoleon was livid. He gripped the sides of the tub and pulled himself almost upright. He said, "Why, you insolent—" It was at this point that it happened. The great man's foot slipped. Holding one side of the tub with one hand and gesturing with the other, he slipped. And the mighty Napoleon, conqueror of a third of the world, landed with a loud splash in the soapy water. Waves of the perfume liquid sloshed out of the tub, and all over Joseph, his face, and his clothes. Watching the flood, Napoleon forgot his own discomfiture, forgot his outburst of anger, and he started to chuckle. As Joseph sputtered in speechless fury, mopping at his eyes and trying to blot the limp ruffles of his shirt and his brocaded vest, then he, Joseph, caught sight of himself in one of the many gilt mirrors, and he smiled. The smile grew into a grin and burst into a laugh. Timid Lucian laughed, and soon the 3 brothers were laughing uncontrollably as Napoleon splashed again and again more of the soapy, smelly water over his brothers, even as they had played as boys so many lost forever years before. When the circus subsided, the anger was gone. The opposition was spent, never to be revived. Napoleon was a fantastically clever man, actually the least of the 3 brothers physically. Yet his uncanny cunning made him their leader and the dictator of a third of the known world. I'm not saying he slipped on purpose. In his later letters, Brother Joseph does not hint that this might have been anything but an accident. But, whether intentional or accidental, because the mighty Napoleon slipped in a bathtub and soapy water quenched the fires of opposition, they closed the deal. They accepted $15 million. They had sold the Louisiana Territory to the United States. Now, who would have thought? This is Chris McCrae. Take care of yourself and the ones you love most.